Bullies pick on the wrong new black girl, not knowing she's a brutal fighter. A new face steps into Stonebridge High, stirring curiosity and whispers through the crowded hallways. Her name is Ebony Cole. All anyone knows is she transferred after some family upheaval, and something in her stare makes the usual troublemakers think twice before messing with her. But that doesn't stop three notorious school bullies, Jake, Connor, and Mateo, from trying to initiate her into their cruel pecking order. They poke, they tease, they snicker behind her back, never imagining for a second that the quiet new girl might carry a past of disciplined fists and raw courage. Their arrogance leads them down a path they'll regret, because Ebony Cole is no ordinary target. Ebony Cole was used to reinvention. By the time she set foot inside Stonebridge High's towering entrance, she had already lived in 5 different states. Each relocation came with its own set of promises, some whispered optimistically by her mother, others carefully reasoned by her father. But Ebony's parents weren't with her at this new place. She arrived under the guardianship of her aunt, Camille, after a bitter custody battle that Ebony tried her hardest to ignore. Stonebridge, with its manicured lawns, shining glass doors, and persistent chatter about scholarship opportunities, felt different from the gritty schools Ebony had known. Her last high school in Detroit was smaller, older, and had a boxing club where she trained daily. Here, the closest thing to boxing equipment was the glistening bench press machine in the football team's exclusive workout room. Nobody seemed to talk about martial arts. Ebony missed the adrenaline of training, missed the ring of sweaty gloves hitting the punching bag. On her first day, Ebony took slow, deliberate steps through the hallway. She felt eyes on her. People rarely saw a newcomer with her confident posture and steady gaze. She wore a black Nike hoodie, battered from years of use, and walked with shoulders squared. She recognized the kind of attention she was getting. Back in Detroit, her friends had teased her. "Girl, you walk like you own the place." But Ebony saw it as self-preservation. Where she'd grown up, you had to show you weren't a pushover. Her homeroom teacher, Mr. Bennett, introduced her to the class. A few curious smiles flickered around the room, but Ebony kept her expression politely neutral, not wanting to share more than necessary. Mr. Bennett gestured for her to take a seat near the back. As she slid into the desk, Ebony noticed 3 boys in varsity jackets. They looked at her, whispered, then snickered. It was an all-too-familiar scenario, a new target for bored bullies. She pretended not to notice. She had bigger things to worry about, like adjusting to a new schedule and dealing with the uneasy tension at her aunt's home. When the lunch bell rang, Ebony made a quick exit. She scanned the cafeteria, wondering where she could sit quietly. Before she chose a table, a short Latina girl with curly hair approached, smiling. "Hey, you're Ebony, right?" she asked, extending a hand. "I'm Marisol." Ebony smiled, relieved someone friendly had approached. They walked to a table where another girl, Jessica, joined them. Immediately, Ebony felt a warmth she rarely experienced on a first day. Over turkey sandwiches and juice boxes, they chatted about Stonebridge traditions, the best teachers, and which tables to avoid. "That one," Jessica said quietly, nodding to a corner table where the 3 varsity jacket boys sprawled out confidently. "They're trouble, especially Jake." Ebony followed Jessica's gaze. Jake was the tall one with sandy hair, a cocky grin plastered on his face. Connor was the muscular one wearing a perpetual scowl, and Mateo was the shortest, but had a mocking gleam in his eyes. Ebony had noticed them even in her home room. They felt dangerous, but Ebony had her own reasons not to fear them. She smiled wryly and changed the topic. Marisol and Jessica didn't know it yet, but Ebony's confidence wasn't hollow. She had spent the last 3 years at a hardcore martial arts gym in Detroit, picking up boxing and Muay Thai. She didn't like fighting, but she was good at it. Very good. More than once, Ebony had used her skills in real-world situations, bullies on the streets, troublemakers in alleyways. She didn't brag or show off. Her father always taught her humility. In Ebony's mind, power was a responsibility, not a ticket to flaunt. The day ended uneventfully, with Ebony heading home to Aunt Camille's. but she couldn't shake off a nagging feeling that her calm start at Stonebridge might be short-lived. Jake and his crew had that arrogant vibe she had seen all too often. In Ebony's world, bullies loved picking on a new face, especially a quiet one. She reminded herself, stay calm, don't cause trouble. Yet something deep inside told her trouble was coming, whether she liked it or not. Word spread fast at Stonebridge that Ebony was from somewhere rough. People talked, rumors flew. Some said she had moved from Chicago, others claimed she came from a disciplinary school, and a few said she was the daughter of a professional fighter. Ebony's silence about her background only stoked speculation. Jake, Connor, and Mateo thrived on gossip. They had a habit of exploiting new students who didn't know the unspoken hierarchy. To the trio, Ebony was a puzzle piece that didn't fit. She was friendly but reserved, polite but not timid. And there was an intangible aura about her that made them both curious and resentful. In their eyes, they had to teach her her place. Days passed, and Ebony tried to keep a low profile. She focused on classwork, often scribbling in a small notebook whenever she felt tension building inside her. The bullies occasionally made passing remarks. Connor once said loud enough for Ebony to hear, "Guess we got another charity case in school." But Ebony pretended not to notice. Jessica warned her to be careful. "They're relentless," Jessica said. "You can't show any weakness." Marisol agreed. "They pick on people, sometimes just for fun. A few kids have transferred out because of them." Ebony listened quietly, her expression thoughtful. She was no stranger to bullies, but she didn't want to draw attention by standing up to them too soon. Besides, Aunt Camille had made her promise not to get into any fights at school. Ebony needed to keep the peace if she wanted any hope of reuniting with her mom and dad again someday. Any trouble in Stonebridge could reflect badly on her, yet Ebony could sense the tension rising like steam in a pressure cooker. One afternoon, she walked past Jake and Connor in the hallway, heading to her locker. She overheard Jake muttering to Connor, "New girl thinks she's tough. Maybe we should show her how things work around here." Ebony kept her head down, heart beating a little faster. She told herself she'd ignore them, but she also knew the inevitability of confrontation. A turning point came when Ebony was alone in the gym after school. She wasn't on any sports teams, so she usually used the deserted track outside or practiced some basic footwork in a quiet corner. That day, the basketball team was at an away game, leaving the gym mostly empty. Ebony did a few shadowboxing moves, trying to vent her pent-up frustration. She had no idea Jake and Mateo slipped in through the side door, chuckling as they watched her. "Whoa, looks like the new girl is a wannabe fighter," Jake snorted, stepping forward. Ebony whirled around, startled. Her fists instinctively came up before she quickly lowered them. She said nothing. Mateo smirked. "Relax, we just want to talk." Ebony's eyes narrowed. "About what?" Jake folded his arms over his chest. "You're new here, Ebony. You seem pretty tough, but let's get one thing straight. We run this school, got it? You might think you can do your little karate moves or whatever, but that doesn't matter here." Ebony felt a rush of anger but forced herself to breathe. She remembered her father's coaching. "Always keep a cool head." She replied calmly, "I'm not looking for any trouble." Jake shrugged, stepping closer. "Funny because trouble might come looking for you if you don't learn your place." Mateo gave her a once-over. "Just thought we'd warn you," he said, feigning concern. "Don't talk back to us. Don't try to get in our way and we won't have a problem." Ebony refused to step back. Their intimidation tactics didn't scare her, but she didn't want a full-blown confrontation. She turned away and started gathering her backpack. "I'll remember your warning," she said. "But seriously, I'm not here to fight." Jake's laughter followed her out. "We'll see how long that lasts." That night, Ebony couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling of her bedroom, replaying the gym incident in her mind. She hated bullies with a passion. Growing up in rough neighborhoods, she had seen bigger, meaner people than these three. But a promise to her aunt anchored her. No violence. She might be forced to break that promise if they kept pushing. Through the darkness, Ebony clutched the single photo she had of her father. face sweaty under bright boxing ring lights, grinning as he lifted Ebony on his shoulders after winning an amateur match years ago. She had grown to mirror his discipline, his skill, his resolve. But just for now, she whispered quietly in her heart, "Please don't make me fight." She didn't want to lose her chance at stability, but sometimes life left no choice. The problem with bullies was that once they sensed vulnerability, they pounced. Jake and his friends interpreted Ebony's polite withdrawal as weakness. They couldn't see the quiet storm waiting in her fists. A week after the gym confrontation, Ebony was rushing to class when she found her locker vandalized. The words "Go home" and "Loser" were scrawled in thick, permanent marker. Several students crowded around, stifling giggles. Ebony's stomach turned. She had been doing her best to be invisible. Some of the watchers snickered, others looked uncomfortable, but no one intervened. Marisol ran over, eyes wide with concern. "Oh my God, Ebony, are you okay?" Ebony took a deep breath. "I'm fine." But deep down she felt a sickening churn of rage. She knew who was responsible. The question was what she'd do about it. Marisol offered to help her scrub off the graffiti. They spent their lunch period furiously scrubbing the metal surface with cleaning supplies from the janitor's closet. Jessica joined, complaining that the school's administration never took bullying seriously enough. Ebony nodded silently. She didn't want to dwell on the negative, but it was impossible not to. As Ebony left the locker area, Jake stood leaning against the wall, arms crossed. His wide smirk told her everything. He was behind it. Ebony's pulse hammered in her veins. But all she did was glare back before walking away. Jake's cruel laughter echoed behind her. Things escalated in the following days. Snide remarks became open taunts. During classes, Ebony caught Jake or Connor hissing insults, calling her charity case or Detroit thug. Ebony tried her best to remain unaffected, but each day the tension rose higher. She feared losing her temper. Her father's lessons guided her. Self-control was key. Then one afternoon she saw something that nearly broke her resolve. Jake and his cronies had cornered a smaller boy named Devin near the bathrooms. Devin was a quiet kid, known for being on the robotics team. Ebony had spoken to him once. He was polite, though a bit shy. When Ebony heard a muffled cry as she passed by, her protective instincts kicked in. She didn't like to meddle in others' fights, but the sight of 3 bigger boys cornering a smaller one triggered a memory of her younger brother, Zion, who she hadn't seen in months due to the family splits. Quietly, Ebony slipped closer to the scene. Devin was backed against the wall while Jake loomed over him. Connor and Mateo stood as watchmen, ensuring no teachers interrupted. Jake was demanding money. Ebony's fists clenched at her sides. Her eyes flashed and she stepped forward. "Leave him alone, Jake." All 3 bullies turned. Devin's eyes flickered with relief at the sight of Ebony. Jake's scowl deepened. "Look who it is. Came to play hero, Ebony?" Her heart pounded. She was outnumbered, cornered in a corridor with no teachers nearby. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak calmly. "He doesn't owe you anything. Get out of his face." Connor snorted. "Aren't you the tough one? Maybe you should mind your own business." Jake leaned forward, his voice dropping low. "You're stepping out of line, Ebony. We told you to stay out of our way." Ebony said nothing, but her body tensed, ready for anything. Jake glared at her, then glanced at Devin, who trembled. "We'll deal with you later," Jake snarled, turning to Ebony as if trying to measure her. He motioned for Connor and Mateo to follow. They left with one final shove against Devin's shoulder, sending him stumbling. Ebony rushed to help Devin. "You okay?" He nodded shakily, tears in his eyes. "Thank you. They do that a lot." Ebony's chest tightened. She knew that by intervening she'd made herself a bigger target, but seeing the fear in Devin's face, she felt no regret. It was better to stand up for him than watch silently. Word got around fast that Ebony had interfered. Some students praised her behind her back, relieved someone was finally standing up to the bullies. Others whispered that Ebony was crazy. Nobody messed with Jake, Connor, and Mateo without consequences. Ebony felt the stares intensify, the tension building so thick in the air she could taste it. Days passed without direct confrontation, but Ebony could sense the storm brewing. She focused on her schoolwork, burying herself in textbooks, hoping maybe the bullies would let it go. But Ebony knew better than to count on that. People like Jake didn't let go of grudges. They hungered for retribution. At home, Ebony barely confided in Aunt Camille. She and her aunt were still getting to know each other. Camille worked 2 jobs and often came home exhausted. She tried her best, but Ebony felt awkward describing the trouble at school. Camille had enough on her plate, and Ebony wanted to avoid confrontation. Late at night, Ebony would slip into the basement, where she hung a makeshift punching bag made of old clothes wrapped in duct tape. Aunt Camille allowed it after Ebony promised not to damage the house. Ebony would spend hours practicing jabs, hooks, and roundhouse kicks, letting each strike channel her frustration. She recalled her father's lessons: speed, agility, discipline. After wiping sweat from her forehead, Ebony would flop onto a stool, chest heaving. She stared at the bag, her mind spinning with questions. Should I have left Devon to fend for himself? Should I have confronted Jake more directly? But Ebony knew that once violence started, there was no easy turning back. A few days later, Ebony was working on a research project in the library when Marisol hurried in, eyes wide. "They're messing with Jessica," she panted. "Jake and Connor cornered her near the football field." Ebony instantly shot up. "What do you mean, messing with her?" Marisol struggled to catch her breath. "They said she's been talking trash about them. They cornered her. She's alone." Without another word, Ebony darted out of the library, Marisol trailing behind. When they reached the football field, Ebony saw a small crowd gathered. Jessica stood there, arms folded, looking furious and slightly afraid as Jake, Connor, and Mateo surrounded her. Jessica was about half their size. "Heard you're Ebony's friend," Jake sneered. "That means you owe us an explanation for her big mouth." Jessica glared back. "Get lost, Jake. You're pathetic." Jake smiled, a twisted grin that bared his teeth. "Pathetic, huh?" Ebony took a step forward, pushing through the onlookers. "Leave her out of this," she said, voice tight. Connor smirked at Ebony. "We told you we'd get you back. You brought it on yourself." Jessica glanced at Ebony, relief washing over her. But Ebony could see fear under Jessica's bravado. Ebony turned her focus to Jake. "If you have a problem, take it up with me." Jake advanced. "Gladly," he said, his eyes glinting. "Because I'm sick of you, Ebony. You think you're tough?" Ebony's blood boiled. She tried to remember her father's voice. Always give them a chance to back down. She spoke quietly. "I don't want to fight you. Just leave my friends alone." Jake let out a laugh. "We're not afraid of you." He shoved Ebony's shoulder, testing her. Around them, the small crowd gasped, phones coming out to record. Ebony stumbled back a step. She locked eyes with Jake, her heart pounding dangerously. This was the moment she had tried to avoid. She inhaled through her nose. "Once I do this, there's no going back." Jake swung a lazy punch at Ebony's arm. She dodged, stepping aside fluidly. The crowd muttered in surprise. Ebony's reflexes were far sharper than typical scuffles. Jake's brow furrowed, and he took a more serious stance. Somewhere behind her, Ebony heard Jessica urging, "Don't do it, Ebony, he's not worth it." But Ebony already felt the surge in her veins. "If I don't stand my ground, they won't stop." Connor, seeing Jake struggle, decided to jump in. He lunged at Ebony, aiming to tackle her. But Ebony's instincts took over. She pivoted her hips, deflecting his momentum and flipping him onto his back with a deft judo-like move. A collective gasp swept the crowd. Connor groaned, stunned. Jake snarled, launching a right hook. Ebony ducked, hooking her own fist into Jake's stomach. He doubled over, the air knocked out of him. Shock registered on his face. Ebony's movements were too swift, too practiced for an average high schooler. Mateo, smaller but sly, rushed at Ebony from behind, trying to grab her. She felt his arm around her neck, but she countered with an elbow strike to his ribs. Mateo let out a choked cry and let go. Ebony spun, fists up, breath heavy. This was a scene she had lived 100 times in training, but never wanted to enact at school. The crowd was in an uproar, cheering or gasping, phones held high. Jessica and Marisol stood off to the side, wide-eyed with worry. Jake staggered back to his feet, glaring, chest heaving. Ebony stood her ground, fists raised, trembling with adrenaline. Teachers came running, their shouts cutting through the chaos. "Break it up!" Mr. Bennett's voice boomed. Suddenly, the adrenaline spiked even higher in Ebony as she realized the implication. She had just fought on school grounds. The carefully contained discipline she'd tried to maintain was undone in a matter of seconds. Jake coughed, doubling over as Miss Palmer, the vice principal, grabbed his arm. Connor was helped up by another teacher, and Mateo clutched his ribs, glaring daggers at Ebony. Ebony lowered her fists, stepping back. Her heart hammered so loud she barely heard Miss Palmer yelling. In the swirling aftermath, Ebony felt her phone vibrate. She looked down briefly. Too many messages popping up at once. Videos were spreading. Gossip was flying. She had revealed her fists of fury to the entire school, and there was no undoing what they'd just witnessed. As the teachers marched them all toward the principal's office, Ebony felt a lump in her throat. She hadn't wanted to fight, but a deep part of her also felt relief, even satisfaction. Now maybe they'll think twice before hurting my friends. Yet she couldn't ignore the dread building up. Aunt Camille would be furious, and the school administrators might punish her severely. In that moment, Ebony realized that the path she'd tried to avoid, confrontation, had found her anyway. The next hour was a blur of raised voices, stern lectures, and awkward silence. Principal Green, a stern woman with sharp features, sat behind her desk and glowered at Ebony, Jake, Connor, and Mateo in turn. Mr. Bennett, Miss Palmer, and a security guard stood by. Principal Green demanded an explanation. Jake and his friends pointed fingers at Ebony, claiming she threw the first punch. Ebony seethed at their lies but calmly explained her side of the story. She admitted to using self-defense but insisted Jake, Connor, and Mateo had started the altercation. The crowd of onlookers outside the office, however, made it impossible for the bullies to hide the truth entirely. Many had caught the fight on camera. After watching several student-recorded videos, Principal Green's expression hardened. It was obvious who initiated contact. She rubbed her temples, exasperated. "This is a serious matter. Physical violence has no place at Stonebridge High." Jake tried to protest. "She flipped Connor. She attacked us." Principal Green fixed him with an icy stare. "I've reviewed the footage. You shoved Ebony first. You and your friend surrounded her. You've been harassing her, haven't you?" Connor started to argue, but Miss Palmer stepped in. "We also have complaints from Devin and Jessica about ongoing bullying." Ebony expected the principal to side with her, but she quickly realized Stonebridge's zero-tolerance policy was ironclad. "All participants in physical violence will receive consequences," Principal Green announced. "Ebony, Jake, Connor, and Mateo, you're each suspended for 3 days. Further discipline may be considered pending our investigation." Ebony felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. Suspension? She'd never been suspended in her life. She wanted to protest, but the principal's steely gaze held her tongue. She glanced at Jake, who scowled, clearly furious he didn't manage to pin the blame solely on her. After the meeting, Ebony waited in a stiff chair outside the office for Aunt Camille to arrive. She stared at the floor, replaying the fight in her head. She felt strangely conflicted. Part of her was proud she protected Jessica and Devin, but a heavier part felt the weight of potential consequences. If this went on her record, would it affect her future? Her aunt would be livid. Sure enough, Aunt Camille arrived in a flurry, hair disheveled from rushing over. She looked Ebony up and down. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly, eyes flickering with concern. Ebony shook her head. "No." Principal Green summarized the incident, then explained the suspension. Camille pressed her lips tightly, anger simmering just beneath the surface. She thanked the principal curtly and led Ebony out of the school. The car ride home was silent until they pulled into the driveway. Camille turned off the engine, exhaling shakily. "Ebony, you promised—" "No fighting," she said, voice trembling. Ebony stared at her hands. They attacked me, Aunt Camille. They've been bullying other kids too. Camille's anger flared. I get it. I hate bullies. But violence isn't the answer. You know your father. He taught you discipline to defend yourself, not to get suspended in a new town. Ebony's voice rose. You think I wanted this? They cornered Jessica. I couldn't just stand by. Aunt Camille's shoulders slumped. She closed her eyes, rubbing her temples. I understand you're trying to help, Ebony, but you need to think about the consequences. We've worked so hard to get you stable. You're on thin ice with your father's custody situation. If the courts see you as violent... Ebony's eyes stung. She looked away, fighting tears of frustration. I'm sorry, she whispered, meaning it. Camille's anger softened at the sight of Ebony's turmoil. She sighed. We'll figure this out, Ebony, but you're grounded for a week. No phone, no going out, no basement training at midnight. Understood? Ebony nodded, biting her lip. She didn't argue. She knew Aunt Camille was only trying to protect her. That evening, Ebony sat on her bed, staring at the blank wall. Her suspension started the next day. She'd be locked out of classes for 3 days, which felt like an eternity. She wondered what the rumor mill would spin in her absence. She also worried about her father's reaction when he found out. Their phone calls were sporadic, and he was still fighting for partial custody. Would he be disappointed in me? Yet even in her guilt, Ebony felt a flicker of pride. She had protected Jessica. She had shown Jake, Connor, and Mateo that she wasn't some easy victim. Even if it meant a suspension, Ebony believed that sometimes standing up for yourself and others was worth the risk. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marisol, some final message before Aunt Camille confiscated it. Thanks for standing up for Jess. Are you okay? Ebony typed back quickly. I'm okay. Just suspended. Thanks for checking on me. Then Camille knocked on her door, took the phone, and Ebony was alone with her thoughts. She lay awake that night, the memory of the fight replaying in vivid flashes, her fists connecting with Jake's stomach, the shock on Connor's face as he was flipped, the crowd's gasps. Ebony shut her eyes, trying to still her mind, but the images wouldn't fade. She had opened a door that couldn't be easily shut, and she had no idea what would come next. The next few days of suspension felt like a strange limbo. Aunt Camille insisted Ebony spend her time studying at home. She provided Ebony with reading assignments from teachers who emailed her the class materials. Ebony followed the routine dutifully, but her mind drifted back to the fight, to the sense of dread about returning to school. On the second day of suspension, Ebony overheard Aunt Camille talking on the phone with Ebony's mother. Through the bedroom wall, Ebony caught bits of hushed conversation, her mother's anxious tone, Camille trying to reassure her, words like incident, violence, custody. Ebony felt a wave of shame. She had promised her parents she would stay out of trouble. She wondered if her father knew already, if he'd be disappointed. Meanwhile, Ebony's classmates texted her updates through Marisol, who became the go-between since Ebony's phone was confiscated. Ebony learned that Jake, Connor, and Mateo were also suspended, and the entire school was buzzing about Ebony's crazy fighting skills. Some believed Ebony was a martial arts champion. Others thought she was a gang member who had attacked the trio without reason. Gossip took on a life of its own. There were also rumors that Jake's parents were outraged and might press charges for assault. Ebony's heart raced at the thought. Could they really press charges? But so far, no police had shown up, so Ebony tried to calm down. By the third day of suspension, Ebony felt like a caged animal, itching to move. She snuck down to the basement while Aunt Camille was at work, letting out her frustration on the duct-taped punching bag. Each strike sent a dull echo through the empty house, punctuating her swirling thoughts. Jake and his friends must be plotting revenge. The whole school must think I'm some kind of monster. Despite her worries, Ebony reminded herself of the bigger picture. She would return to school and face whatever waited. She refused to cower. If anything, she hoped the bullies had learned their lesson. But Ebony knew bullies rarely changed overnight. On the final evening of her suspension, Camille sat Ebony down at the kitchen table. The tension had eased between them somewhat, but Camille's eyes still held concern. "Listen," she began. "I know you felt you had to step in to protect Jessica. I respect that, but Stonebridge isn't your old neighborhood. People here, they'll judge you differently." Ebony frowned. "I know, but bullies are bullies anywhere." Camille nodded. "You're right, and I'm proud you stood up for someone, but you need to be careful. Your father's custody hearing is approaching. We need to show that you can handle conflicts without violence." Ebony met her aunt's gaze. "I'll try. I couldn't watch them hurt Jessica." Camille patted Ebony's hand. "I understand. I do. Just promise me, if something like this happens again, find a teacher, call me, do anything before it escalates. We can't afford another suspension." Ebony nodded, her throat tight. "I promise I'll try, Auntie." That night, Ebony lay awake, counting the hours until she returned to Stonebridge. She had no idea what the day would bring, but she felt a small flame of determination burn in her chest. She was done letting fear decide her path. If the bullies wanted to keep coming after her, so be it. Ebony Cole wasn't the type to back down, even if it scared her. When Ebony walked back through the front doors of Stonebridge High, tension crackled in the air. It felt like everyone was watching her. Whispers spread through the hallway, but Ebony kept her head high, ignoring the stares. "Hey, Ebony," a voice called. She turned to see Devin, the timid boy she'd defended, jogging up. He looked nervous but determined. "Thank you for, sticking up for me. Sorry about your suspension." Ebony forced a small smile. "Don't worry about it, Devin. I'd do it again if I had to." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I just wanted you to know, not everyone believes the rumors. A lot of us appreciate what you did." A wave of gratitude warmed Ebony. She nodded back. "Thanks, man. That means a lot." As she made her way to class, Ebony bumped into Marisol, who handed her a piece of paper with a scribbled message. "Jessica says she's skipping the morning period. She's shaken up. She didn't want to face Jake and his cronies." Ebony frowned. "Are they back today too?" Marisol nodded. "Yeah, they're back. And rumor has it Jake is furious." Ebony sighed, tension knotting in her stomach. She stepped into her homeroom, keeping her gaze forward. Sure enough, in the far corner sat Jake, Connor, and Mateo. They glared at her, venom in their eyes. Ebony steeled herself and took her seat. Mr. Bennett began class, but Ebony could hardly concentrate. She felt the bullies' stares like daggers in her back. She wondered if they would keep their heads down after the suspension, or if they'd seek revenge. At lunch, Ebony sat with Marisol. Jessica eventually joined them, looking pale. She flinched every time she caught sight of Jake's table. Ebony tried to reassure her. They won't dare try something in front of all these people again. Jessica wasn't convinced. Jake's not the type to let it go. I overheard him telling Connor they'd make you pay. I'm worried. Ebony took a deep breath. I can't hide forever. Neither should you. We stick together, and if they try something, we report it immediately. Marisol nodded in agreement, though her face showed doubt. The rest of the school day passed with uneasy anticipation. Ebony kept expecting Jake or Connor to appear out of nowhere, but they stayed out of her way. That evening, Ebony headed home, feeling a combination of relief and dread. Something told her the storm wasn't over. It was just gathering strength. And indeed, the next day proved Ebony's intuition correct. During gym class, Ebony was assigned to the same period as Jake and Mateo. The teacher, Coach Williamson, divided the class into teams for a basketball scrimmage. Ebony ended up on a different team than the bullies, but it didn't stop them from taunting her. Here comes the black belt, Mateo muttered under his breath when Ebony dribbled past him. Jake joined in with mocking jabs. Careful, Ebony might go all UFC on us. Ebony ignored them, focusing on the game, but her frustration built with each insult. She shot a glance at Coach Williamson, who either didn't notice or chose to ignore the bullying. Ebony tried to stay calm, passing the ball to a teammate rather than let her anger affect her performance. Then, During a rebound scramble, Jake accidentally elbowed Ebony in the ribs. She stumbled, gasping. Jake mumbled a sarcastic apology. Ebony clutched her side, biting back a retort. If she lashed out now, she'd only prove them right. After class, Ebony was heading to the locker room when Mateo blocked her path, arms folded. Jake stood behind him, smirking. "Nice game out there," Jake said, sarcasm dripping from his tone. Ebony tried to sidestep. "Move." Mateo chuckled. "Touchy, touchy." Ebony stared him down. "I'm not looking for trouble. Let me through." Jake's expression twisted into a sneer. "You already found trouble when you showed us up in front of everyone. Do you realize how humiliating that was?" Ebony's anger flared. "You humiliated yourselves." In an instant, Jake grabbed Ebony's arm, his grip tight. Ebony yanked away, her training kicking in. She locked his wrist, preparing to flip him, but caught herself. No fighting, no suspension. She let go, glaring. "Don't touch me again." Coach Williamson emerged from his office, his booming voice echoing in the locker area. "Break it up. You kids get dressed and get out." Jake and Mateo backed off, glaring. Ebony stormed away. Her heart pounded furiously. If Coach hadn't come out, she might have ended up fighting again. She realized just how close she was to crossing that line. All through that night, Ebony replayed the locker room confrontation. She was proud of her restraint, but a voice in her head whispered that Jake wouldn't quit. He wanted to break her. She considered telling Aunt Camille the full story, but she hesitated. "I can handle this." Yet Ebony couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something bigger was brewing, something that would test her resolve like never before. 2 weeks passed in a precarious stalemate. Ebony kept her distance from Jake, Connor, and Mateo. She had no more fights, but the tension remained, and rumors continued swirling about Ebony's violent background. Ebony tried to keep her cool, throwing herself into her studies. The last thing she wanted was to let the bullies sabotage her academic future. During this time, Ebony grew closer to Marisol and Jessica. They often studied together, bonded by shared anxieties. Devon occasionally joined them, grateful for Ebony's protection. However, Ebony couldn't help noticing a strange shift in the social atmosphere. Some students, particularly those who despised Jake's bullying, started admiring Ebony quietly. A few even approached her, asking for self-defense tips. Ebony politely declined, wary of drawing more attention. One afternoon, while Ebony was in the library, she discovered an old-school newspaper featuring an article about a local MMA gym, affiliated with Stonebridge High's sports department. Intrigued, Ebony read on. The article was a few years old, but it mentioned the gym welcomed students interested in martial arts. Ebony felt a spark of hope. Maybe she could resume her formal training without traveling far. However, in the same moment, she worried that training in a local gym might fuel the rumors that she was some kind of violent hooligan. That day, a chance meeting flipped Ebony's perspective. On her way home, she passed a sign for Robinson's MMA and boxing gym. It was the same gym from the old article. Against her better judgment, Ebony pushed open the door and stepped inside. Inside, the air smelled of sweat and determination. A group of fighters practiced pad work in the ring while a coach barked instructions. Ebony's heart pounded with nostalgia. She remembered her father's gym in Detroit, how the rhythmic thud of gloves hitting pads was like a second heartbeat for her. A tall, muscular man approached. "Can I help you?" he asked kindly. Ebony cleared her throat. "I'm Ebony. I just moved here. I used to box in Detroit." The man introduced himself as Coach Miller. He brightened at Ebony's admission. "Detroit, that's a serious city for boxing. If you've got experience, we'd love to have you train here. We have youth programs, amateur fights, lots of opportunities." Ebony hesitated. She remembered Aunt Camille's warning. Keep your head down, avoid violence. But the sight of the punching bags and the ring pulled at her. "I'd like to check it out, but I'm not sure if I can commit right now." Coach Miller nodded. "No rush. We're open 6 days a week. Just drop by if you want a session." Ebony thanked him and left, conflicted. Part of her longed to train again, to focus her energy in a positive way. Another part reminded her of the trouble she was already in. She decided she'd talk to Aunt Camille first before making any moves. The next morning at school, Ebony was seated in the cafeteria with Marisol, Jessica, and Devon when an unexpected voice interrupted them. "Ebony, can I talk to you?" They turned to see a tall African-American girl wearing a stylish jacket and holding a phone. Ebony didn't recognize her immediately, but she knew the face. Lauren Jacobs, a popular blogger and the captain of the debate club. "Sure," Ebony replied warily. "What's up?" Lauren pulled up a video on her phone. It was a clip of Ebony's fight with the Bullies, posted on a local teen's YouTube channel. It already had thousands of views. Ebony's stomach churned, seeing herself flipping Connor and punching Jake. The title read, "New Girl Destroys School Bullies." "Someone gave me a tip about this video," Lauren explained. "I run a personal blog about social issues at Stonebridge. Bullying is a big topic lately. I was hoping to interview you, Ebony. I think your perspective could raise awareness." Ebony felt her cheeks grow hot. "I'm not sure that's a good idea. I don't want more attention." Lauren nodded understandingly. "I get that. But the school tends to brush these things under the rug. We could share your side of the story. Why you felt forced to fight back. How Stonebridge handles bullies. It might help other students who feel alone." Jessica nudged Ebony gently. "Maybe it's a chance to set the record straight. Let people know you're not just some violent transfer." Ebony considered. On one hand, the last thing she wanted was more drama. On the other, Lauren's plan might encourage the administration to take bullying more seriously. After a pause, Ebony said, "Okay, but can we do this off school grounds?" Lauren smiled. "Sure. Let's meet at the Starbucks near campus after school. I'll buy you a latte." The interview at Starbucks took place late in the afternoon. Ebony sipped a hot chocolate while Lauren set up her phone to record. They found a quieter corner, away from the bustle of customers. "So, Ebony," Lauren began with a gentle smile, "tell me about yourself, where you're from, why you transferred here." Ebony hesitated, glancing around nervously. "I moved from Detroit, family stuff." She didn't elaborate on the custody battle. "I ended up at Stonebridge with my aunt. I've been here a couple months now." Lauren nodded. "You have a boxing or martial arts background, correct? That's what people are saying." Ebony swallowed. "My dad taught me. He was an amateur boxer and I trained at a local gym in Detroit. But it was for self-defense, not to go around starting fights." Lauren leaned forward. "What about the fight with Jake, Connor, and Mateo? Some say you attacked them, others say they started it." Ebony's eyes flickered with annoyance. "They started it. They were bullying me and my friends, cornering people, demanding money, insults. That day they confronted Jessica. I intervened, but I never intended to fight. It just happened. They shoved me first." Lauren's gaze was empathetic. "Do you feel the school's administration supported you?" Ebony let out a bitter laugh. "They suspended all of us. Zero-tolerance policy, I guess. But it doesn't solve the underlying issue. Those guys have been terrorizing students for a long time and no one really stops them." Lauren nodded, her expression serious. "I've heard the same story from others. That's why I want to shed light on this. Bullies get away with too much. Is there anything you'd like to say to students watching this interview?" Ebony took a moment to think. Then she looked directly at Lauren's phone camera. "Bullying isn't just a school kids being kids situation. It destroys confidence. It isolates people. If you're a victim, speak up. If you see someone being bullied, don't turn a blind eye. The only reason I stepped in was because I knew what it felt like to be picked on and have no one help. I'm not a violent person, but I won't stand by and watch innocent people suffer." Lauren smiled, stopping the recording. "Thank you, Ebony. I'll edit this and post it on my blog. I'll let you know when it's up." After they parted ways, Ebony walked home, feeling a swirl of emotions. She was relieved to share her side, but anxious about how the bullies would react if they saw the interview. People like Jake didn't appreciate public humiliation. Sure enough, Ebony got her answer the very next day. As she walked into school, murmurs buzzed in the hallway. People had seen the blog post. Some gave Ebony approving nods. Others looked at her like she was stirring up trouble. Jake stormed up to Ebony before first period, looking livid. "You made a blog about me," he hissed. Ebony stood her ground. "I told the truth." His face reddened. "You're going to regret that." She clenched her fists but forced herself to remain calm. "Threatening me again. You haven't learned, have you?" Jake sneered, stepping closer. "Watch your back," he warned. "You think a little interview can save you? You're gonna wish you never transferred here." Miss Palmer appeared down the hallway, eyeing the tension. Jake slunk away, leaving Ebony with a pounding heart. His tone reeked of danger. Ebony forced a steady breath. The fight in front of the crowd was one thing. Jake could escalate in more cunning ways now that his pride was battered publicly. Later that day, Ebony noticed a group of older students, likely friends of Jake, wearing football jackets. Watching her from across the cafeteria, they whispered and laughed. Ebony recognized the signs. Jake was rallying bigger backup. The bullies were not done. They were regrouping. A creeping dread settled over Ebony's stomach. She didn't fear them physically. She had handled Jake and his closest pals. But she worried about what they might do behind the scenes. Maybe they'd frame her for cheating or spread vicious rumors to isolate her. She thought of her father's custody hearing. Another incident could end very badly for Ebony. As Ebony left school that day, she saw Jake standing by a pickup truck with a group of boys, all older and more muscular. One of them jostled Ebony's shoulder as she passed, and Jake merely smirked. Ebony pretended not to notice, quickening her pace. A part of her yearned to fight them all if they attacked, but she held back. Fighting in the parking lot could lead to arrests, not just suspensions. When Ebony got home, Aunt Camille noticed her tense expression. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. Ebony deliberated whether to share everything. Finally, she sighed. "Jake's furious about the interview. He's got more of his buddies involved now." Camille frowned, worry creasing her forehead. "You should talk to the principal. Show them this is ongoing harassment." Ebony looked away, chewing her lip. "But I'm scared they'll twist it around again, and I don't have proof, just warnings and stares." Camille placed a comforting hand on Ebony's shoulder. "Let me talk to the principal with you tomorrow. We'll figure something out." Ebony nodded. She appreciated her aunt's concern but couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in her gut. People like Jake, bitter, vengeful, were capable of more than just empty threats. Ebony might be forced to defend herself again, and this time the stakes would be higher. 2 days later, Ebony and Aunt Camille met with Principal Green. They discussed the ongoing harassment and Ebony's fears about retribution from Jake and his newly expanded clique. Principal Green seemed sympathetic but was hamstrung by the need for concrete evidence. "I'll speak to them," she promised, "and the staff will keep an eye out." Ebony left the office feeling uneasy. Keep an eye out? That was hardly reassuring. Sure enough, later that day, Ebony discovered that talk was cheap. On her way home from school, Ebony decided to stop by the local convenience store for a quick snack. She saw a pickup truck pull up, Jake at the wheel, Connor next to him, and 2 older guys in the back seat who Ebony vaguely recognized as members of the football team. Ebony's pulse quickened. She considered crossing the street to avoid them, but they spotted her first. The truck screeched into the parking lot, blocking Ebony's path. Jake jumped out, eyes gleaming with malevolence. Connor and the older guys followed. Ebony glanced around. No witnesses, no cameras. Her heart thudded. She set down her grocery bag, squaring her stance just in case. Jake smiled nastily. "You want to humiliate me online, here's your consequence." Connor cracked his knuckles. The older guys grinned, obviously itching for a fight. Ebony tried to reason with them. "Don't do this," she said quietly, voice steady. "You'll get yourselves in serious trouble." Jake's face twisted with hatred. "Don't you get it? I don't care anymore." And face them they did. Over the next few days, Ebony learned that Coach Miller's eyewitness account and the convenience store's security camera footage painted a damning picture of Jake, Connor, and the older boys. The police opened an investigation into assault. Jake and Connor were arrested, then released under parental supervision, pending formal charges. Stonebridge High was thrown into an uproar. Word spread that not only were Jake and his friends facing expulsion, but they might also face legal repercussions. The gossip mill turned on the bullies. Students who once feared them whispered that they got what they deserved. Some expressed relief. Others pretended they never supported them in the first place. In the weeks that followed, Ebony found her life taking unexpected turns. Jake and his cronies were suspended indefinitely, pending a school board hearing that could expel them. Their legal case hung in the balance. Stonebridge High's atmosphere seemed lighter without their constant threat. Victims of their harassment began speaking up, sharing stories that painted a grim picture of years of unchecked bullying. Aunt Camille followed through on pressing charges, working closely with the police. Ebony cooperated, giving detailed statements. Meanwhile, Ebony resumed her classes, albeit with a noticeable bruise on her cheek and bandages on her ribs. Teachers eyed her with a newfound respect, or was it caution? Ebony couldn't be sure. Marisol, Jessica, and Devon surrounded Ebony with support, helping her catch up on missed notes and homework. "You're basically a hero," Jessica told her one afternoon, gratitude shining in her eyes. "You faced them head on." Ebony shrugged, still grappling with the aftermath. "I'm no hero. I just stood up for myself like anybody should." But Ebony couldn't deny the relief of walking through the hallways without fear lurking at every corner. She saw the younger students, the quiet ones who used to look terrified, now smiling at her in passing. She felt a sense of community forming around the idea that bullies couldn't just run rampant. One day, while Ebony was retrieving books from her locker, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned, ready for trouble, but it was Mr. Bennett. "Ebony," he began hesitantly, "I wanted to apologize." Ebony blinked in surprise. "For what?" Mr. Bennett sighed. "For not taking a stronger stance from the start. Teachers often see signs of bullying but brush it off or assume it's just teenage drama. Seeing what happened to you opened our eyes. I'm sorry we didn't protect you or the other students sooner." Ebony felt a lump in her throat. She nodded slowly. "I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Bennett." With the bullies out of the picture, Ebony felt an odd emptiness in her daily routine, like removing a constant background noise. She found herself re-examining her future at Stonebridge. Maybe it was time to get involved in something positive. Thank you for joining me on this intense journey through the halls of Stonebridge High, where a group of cocky bullies learned the hard way that picking on the wrong person can have serious consequences. Ebony Cole's struggle wasn't about seeking violence. It was about defending what's right, standing up for herself and her friends, and sparking much-needed change in a broken system. In the end, her resilience shone through, proving that perseverance, integrity, and courage can triumph over intimidation. If you found yourself rooting for Ebony, feeling every punch and heartbeat, and celebrating her well-earned victories, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps bring more powerful stories of perseverance to life. Spread the word so others can discover Ebony's story, and maybe find inspiration to stand up against their own battles. Until next time, stay brave and keep fighting for what's right.